this is something that you talked about. Yes, yeah. So you wrote actually, it's titled seminal paper titled Therapeutic Interpersonal Interactions, the
Yes.
sacrificial lamb that you have
Mhm.
written and is being used
Yes.
today. So that's wonderful that there are people recognizing the problem and trying to do
Oh,
something about it.
yes.
There are many.
Recognize it. You see the basis of all this. So we asked today, so why are we crazy? Why did we do these treatments? And one
Yeah.
of the worst ones, of course, was lobotomy.
Yeah.
And that was horrific.
Ah,
And I remember seeing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and maybe you saw that movie some time ago. It was in the 1970s, I think. Well, that was the reality. That's what happened. And when I was at Teachers College, I met a nurse who, in her earlier years, her husband was stationed in Williamsburg, Virginia, and she was an OR nurse. And I asked her, what was it like there? This was it must have been in the 1950s when she was
yeah.
there. And she told me that because she was in the OR, she was responsible to help the doctors the patients have lobotomies. And when I mentioned that word to her, she just broke down in tears. This is years
Mm,
later.
yeah.
And she said she felt so terrible that she had to assist. It was her job. She was a young nurse. And then what the patients looked like afterwards, because that procedure, of course, was really butchering, sticking an ice pick through the eye socket into your
Yes.
brain and then destroying part of your brain. And then
Mm,
you would be like hugging teddy bears afterwards and crying. And she
right.
said afterwards was the worst when you walked through the ward. So that was a personal communication with my friend, who was this great OR nurse, and later on was in charge of huge hospitals, ORs like Mount Sinai in New York. But she remembered that early experience, and she said she'll never forget it. And all the big
Yeah.
names came there, and they thought this was gave people hope. And even the Kennedys were affected by it, because we all know about Rosemary Kennedy and
Oh,
how at the time people were saying that she was retarded. Those were the words used. And her father was convinced by these doctors
oh
that, oh, she
no.
would be fine after having a lobotomy. And now she was this
Mm,
beautiful young woman. She had the most perfect smile, I know, because I have a book, a biography
yeah.
about her.
Yeah.
And so they did this to her. Of course, sometimes the patients didn't even have consents. It was sometimes family said, okay, do it, or no family. They just did it. Um, it's like if you watch the movie, you'll see how people were selected. If you were too rowdy, you might be selected, or if you were homosexual, or if you were a woman, you might be prone to
Uh,
having this. And so she had the procedure, and the very next moment, she couldn't function for the rest of her life. It just totally destroyed her personality, everything, and her ability to care for herself, and even toilet yourself or anything like
right.
this. It was just horrific. But now we look back and we say, oh, and the person who was the co-creator, Moniz, he won a Nobel Prize for this in 1949. So you could see how desperate we were to
Yeah.
to learn how to take care of people who had mental disorders. And it was all somatic, meaning a physical approach rather
Yeah.
than talking
Yeah.
to people. And and it was just horrifying to me, to see this. And it's reflected in the movies, like A Beautiful Mind. That was
Yeah.
about insulin um, therapy, coma therapy, and then One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and of course the early movies like Snake Pit and
Oh,
I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. Those movies
right.
enlightened me when I was younger. But I still have the film part of it, a video of the movies. So I do watch them as I do my research, part of my research.